Cowboys Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you could completely change how you feel about this team's future. A massive move is being discussed in NFL circles, and it directly impacts the Dallas Cowboys' chances of returning to playoff glory. This is the kind of news that separates the casual fans from the diehards, and if you're still here after the disaster we witnessed last season, you deserve to know exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Before we dive into this, I need you to do me a quick favor. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell right now because we're dropping Cowboys content every single day and you do not want to miss what's coming next. This offseason is heating up fast, and I promise you, the moves we're about to discuss could define the next era of Dallas Cowboys football. Now let me set the stage here because if you watched the Cowboys play defense last season, you already know how painful this is going to be to talk about. The 2025 Dallas Cowboys were supposed to be different. They were supposed to take that next step. They were supposed to prove to the entire football world that this franchise was ready to compete for championships again. Instead, what did we get? We got a 7-9-1 record. We got embarrassed on national television multiple times. We got a defense that looked like it had absolutely no answers for opposing quarterbacks. And here's the stat that should make every single Cowboys fan sick to their stomach. The Dallas Cowboys allowed more passing yards than any other team in the entire National Football League last season. Let that sink in for a moment. More than 31 other teams, more than rebuilding franchises, more than teams that were actively trying to lose games. The Dallas Cowboys, one of the most storied franchises in professional sports history, had the worst pass defense in football. That is absolutely unacceptable, and everyone in that organization knows it. So what happened? How did we get here? Well, the answer is complicated, but let me break it down for you. The Cowboys made the decision to move on from Trevon Diggs, and regardless of how you feel about that choice, it left a massive hole in the secondary. Diggs was a playmaker. He was a ball hawk. He created turnovers that changed games. And when he left, the Cowboys were suddenly scrambling to figure out who was going to step up and fill that void. The reality is that nobody did. The only true proven piece remaining in that secondary right now is Darren Bland. And listen, I love Bland just as much as you do. That guy is special. He's got instincts that you cannot teach. He's got ball skills that make him a legitimate threat every single snap. But here's the cold, hard truth that nobody wants to admit. Darren Bland cannot do this alone. You cannot ask one cornerback, no matter how talented he is, to single-handedly fix a secondary that was hemorrhaging yards all season long. It's not fair to him, and it's not realistic from a football standpoint. This brings us to the two names that have been swirling around Dallas Cowboys discussions for weeks now. Two potential solutions that could completely transform this defense. Two players with very different profiles, very different price tags, and very different risk levels, and I'm going to break down both of them for you right now because what you're about to hear might shock you. The first name is going to make some of you jump out of your seats with excitement and make others want to throw your phone across the room. I'm talking about Jalen Ramsey. Yes, that Jalen Ramsey, the former All-Pro, the guy who quarterbacks used to actively avoid, the trash talker who backed it up on the field for years, the corner who was considered the best in the entire league at his peak. According to reports from Bleacher Report, there is a proposed trade scenario between the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers that would send Jalen Ramsey to Dallas for a fifth-round pick. Let me repeat that because I need you to fully understand what we're talking about here. A fifth-round pick. That's it. That's the price tag being discussed for a player who was once considered the most dominant cornerback in professional football. Now, immediately, your brain should be going in two different directions. Part of you is probably thinking, this is an absolute steal. This is the kind of move that could instantly upgrade the defense and bring legitimacy back to a secondary that desperately needs it. But the other part of you, the more cautious part, is probably asking a very important question. Why is a player like Jalen Ramsey available for basically nothing? What are we missing here? And that's exactly where we need to dig deeper because the answer is complicated. Let's talk about what happened to Jalen Ramsey in 2025 because the numbers do not lie. He allowed a 70.4% completion rate when targeted last season. That's not good. That's not even close to good. When opposing quarterbacks threw at Ramsey, they completed over 70% of their passes. Think about that. This is a guy who used to lock down entire sides of the field. This is a guy who receivers feared matching up against. And last season, quarterbacks were completing passes against him like he was a practice squad corner. His passer rating allowed when targeted was 118.1. Again, for those who don't follow advanced metrics, that is an extremely high number. That means quarterbacks were having success throwing in his direction. They were moving the chains. They were racking up yards. They were not afraid of Jalen Ramsey anymore. And here's where it gets even more concerning. Throughout the season, the Steelers kept moving Ramsey around, trying to find a spot where he could be effective. He played outside corner. He played in the slot. He even moved to safety late in the season. When you see a team doing that with a player of Ramsey's caliber, it tells you something important. It tells you they're trying to figure out how to hide his weaknesses instead of featuring his strengths. That's not what you want to see from a guy you're considering bringing in to be a cornerstone of your defense. But wait, there's more. Let's talk about the contract situation because this is where things get really tricky. Jalen Ramsey carries a $19.5 million cap hit in 2026. That is a lot of money. That is starter money. That is money you pay to a guy you're counting on to be one of the best players at his position. And right now, Ramsey is 31 years old, coming off a down year, changing positions, and showing signs that his elite athleticism might finally be catching up with him. Here's the kicker, though. If the Steelers simply cut Ramsey before the season, they save that entire $19.5 million with zero dead cap. Nothing. They walk away clean. So the question becomes, why would Dallas trade for him and take on that contract when they could potentially just wait and sign him for cheaper once he hits the open market? This is where the gamble comes in, and this is where Cowboys fans need to really think about what kind of team they want this to be. On one hand, trading for Ramsey now gives you control. It gives you certainty. It means you don't have to worry about another team swooping in and signing him. It means you can get him in the building, get him learning the system, get him building chemistry with the rest of the defense before training camp even starts. But on the other hand, you're taking on significant financial risk for a player who might not be the same guy he used to be. Now let me flip the script for a second because despite everything I just said, there is absolutely a scenario where this move makes complete sense for the Dallas Cowboys. First, let's talk about versatility because even at this stage of his career, Ramsey can still do things that most cornerbacks simply cannot. He can play outside, he can play the slot, he can drop back to safety, he can be moved around the formation depending on the matchup. That kind of flexibility is incredibly valuable in today's NFL, where offenses are constantly finding new ways to create mismatches. Imagine having a guy like Ramsey who can line up against the opposing team's best receiver one week, then shift to the slot the next week to take away a dangerous slot machine, then drop back to safety against a team that likes to attack the middle of the field. That's chess, not checkers, and that's exactly what a smart defensive coordinator wants to have at his disposal. Second, let's talk about something that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. Leadership, football IQ, veteran presence. Jalen Ramsey has been in big games. He's been in hostile environments. He's faced the best quarterbacks and receivers in the world. He knows what it takes to compete at the highest level. And right now, the Dallas Cowboys secondary is young and inexperienced. They need someone who can communicate. They need someone who can make adjustments on the fly. They need someone who can set the tone in practice and demand excellence from everyone around him. Even if Ramsey's physical skills have declined, his mental game and his ability to elevate the players around him could be invaluable. Third, and this is the most intriguing part, let's talk about motivation. If Dallas can restructure that contract and get Ramsey at a reasonable price, you might be getting a guy who has something to prove, a guy who's been written off, a guy who wants to show the entire league that he's still elite. We've seen this story play out so many times in the NFL. Veterans who looked washed up on one team suddenly bounce back and play some of the best football of their careers when they land in the right situation. Richard Sherman did it. Darrelle Revis did it. What if Jalen Ramsey is next? What if Dallas is the place where he reminds everyone why he was once the best cornerback in football? But here's my honest take. As a fan who has watched this team for years and been burned by big-name signings before, I do not want this move at full price. No way. $19.5 million for a 31-year-old cornerback coming off a bad season is too risky. The Cowboys have too many other holes to fill. They cannot afford to handcuff themselves financially for a player who might not deliver. But if Jerry Jones and the front office can work some magic, if they can restructure that deal, if they can get Pittsburgh to eat some of that salary, if they can acquire Ramsey without giving up significant draft capital, then I'm absolutely interested. Because the reality is that the Cowboys do not have the luxury of being picky right now. They need help in the secondary, and they need it immediately. Now let's shift gears and talk about the second name that has been generating serious buzz in Cowboys circles. This is a name that might not make as many headlines as Jalen Ramsey, But in some ways, this player might actually be a better fit for what Dallas needs right now. I'm talking about Jamal Dean, the Super Bowl champion cornerback from Tampa Bay, and let me tell you why this name should excite every single Cowboys fan listening to this. Jamal Dean brings something to the table that this defense has been missing for a long time. Size, speed, physicality. We're talking about a guy who stands 6'1" with legitimate track star speed and the ability to jam receivers at the line of scrimmage. In today's NFL, where offenses are loaded with big-bodied receivers who can win at the catch point, having a cornerback with that kind of physical profile is absolutely essential. Look at the NFC East and think about the receivers Dallas has to face twice a year. Think about the explosive passing attacks in this division. You need corners who can match up with those guys, who can get in their face at the line, who can disrupt timing and throw off the entire offensive rhythm. Jamal Dean is exactly that kind of player. But here's what makes Dean even more intriguing. This is a guy who has been there before. This is a guy who knows what it takes to win at the highest level. He was part of that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that won Super Bowl 55. He played meaningful snaps in playoff games against some of the best offenses in football. He delivered when the pressure was at its absolute peak. And right now, what does the Dallas Cowboys secondary lack more than anything? Big game experience, championship mentality, proven winners in key spots. How many times have we watched this defense fold in crucial moments? How many times have we seen young corners get exposed when the lights were brightest? Jamal Dean has already been through the fire. He knows what it feels like to compete for everything, and he brings that mentality into the locker room every single day. Now let's talk about production, because I know some of you are wondering if Dean is actually good enough to make a difference. Here's what I'll say. Jamal Dean is not going to be a flashy highlight machine cornerback. He's not going to give you 10 interceptions. He's not going to be making SportsCenter every week with ridiculous one-handed picks. But what he does give you is reliability, consistency, fewer blown assignments, a dependable outside presence that you can count on week after week after week. And honestly, after what we witnessed last season, consistency might be exactly what this team needs more than anything else. The Cowboys don't need another boom or bust player. They need someone who shows up every Sunday, does his job at a high level, and doesn't give up the big plays that kill drives and lose games. But let's be honest here, because nothing is perfect. And there are legitimate concerns with this move as well. First, let's talk about age and timeline. Jamal Dean is 29 years old. Now, that's not ancient by any means, but it's not young either. So the question becomes, does he fit the long-term plan, or is this just a short-term patch? If Dallas signs Dean to a multi-year deal, they're betting that he can maintain this level of play well into his 30s. That's a gamble, and it's one that doesn't always pay off with cornerbacks who rely on their athleticism. Second, market competition. If Dean hits free agency, he's not going to be cheap, and the Cowboys are not going to be the only team interested. Multiple franchises around the league need help at cornerback. There will be a bidding war, and when bidding wars happen, prices skyrocket. Dallas might have to pay significantly more than they want to in order to secure his services, and that could limit what they can do elsewhere on the roster. Third, and this is the big question that nobody has definitively answered yet, is Jamal Dean a true CB1, or is he a really solid CB2? Because there's a massive difference between those two things. A CB1 is a guy you can line up against the opposing team's best receiver and trust him to win that matchup more often than not. A CB2 is a guy who's valuable but needs help from the scheme or from another corner taking the toughest assignment. If Dallas brings in Dean, expecting him to be the guy, to be the shutdown corner who anchors the entire secondary, that might be asking too much. But if they bring him in as part of a broader plan, as a complementary piece alongside Darren Bland and other additions, then suddenly the fit looks a lot better. Here's where I stand on this one. I actually really like the idea of bringing in Jamal Dean. This team doesn't need another risky experiment right now. It doesn't need another project corner who might develop in 2 years. It needs stability. It needs experience. It needs someone who can come in day one and contribute at a professional level. Jamal Dean gives you all of that. But, and this is important, I'm not overpaying. If the price gets crazy, if multiple teams start throwing insane money at him, I'm walking away, because this roster still has multiple holes to fill, and you cannot break the bank for one player when you have deficiencies across the board. What does all of this tell us about the direction of the Dallas Cowboys? These rumors, these discussions, these names being floated around, they tell me something very important. The front office knows the secondary is broken, and they're actively looking for solutions. They're exploring proven veterans. They're considering championship caliber players. They're targeting guys who can make an immediate impact. That's a shift in mindset from what we've seen in recent years. And honestly, it's about time. Standing still in the NFL is how you fall behind. Standing still is how you watch other teams improve while you're stuck in mediocrity. The Cowboys cannot afford to stand still this offseason. They have to be aggressive. They have to make moves. And based on what we're hearing, it sounds like that's exactly what they're preparing to do. Now, I want to hear from you, Cowboys Nation. This is a conversation, and your voice matters. Would you pull the trigger on the Jalen Ramsey trade? Are you willing to take that gamble on a declining star who might still have something left in the tank? Or would you rather pursue Jamal Dean, the steady veteran who brings consistency and championship experience? Maybe you think Dallas should go in a completely different direction and draft a corner early, or target another free agent we haven't even discussed yet. Whatever your opinion is, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know what the real Cowboys fans think about this situation. This offseason is going to define the next chapter of Dallas Cowboys football, and we're going to cover every move, every rumor, every signing right here on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure notifications are on, and let's ride this out together because Cowboys Nation, our time is coming, and it might be sooner than anyone thinks. Stay locked in, and I'll see you in the next one.